Honestly, like, for the most part, it was pretty peaceful yesterday, and it wasn't like as chaotic as they were saying. Like,
as National Guard troops prepare to deploy to Portland, people who work and live near the city's ICE facility give their feedback on what's actually happening in their neighborhood. Plus,
we have two CRJs on mic that collided.
Two planes in New York collide on the taxiway. How it happened, along with an update on the passengers and crew. Then later.
I'm so pleased and relieved, honestly.
Parking in downtown Portland is about to be free again after 7 p.m., while the mayor decided to pull back on the city's new plan to extend pay-to-park hours. KGW News at noon starts right now.
We're working closely with our federal partners, but the facility itself is managed and governed by the Federal Protective Service, and they have responsibility for that. And the incidents you speak of, for example, last night, occurring on their property. But Portland is very much engaged. And once again, this is just one small block in a big city that we're trying to manage for all the Portlanders.
One small block in a big city. That was Police Chief Bob Day on CNN last night, describing the area around Portland's ICE facility near the South Waterfront. Thanks for joining us. I'm Drew Carney. This afternoon, we're learning that the Trump administration has asked a federal judge to recuse himself from the lawsuit filed by the state of Oregon to block the president's deployment of the National Guard to Portland. A hearing for that lawsuit is supposed to take place at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. In a court filing today, the administration points to public statements made by Oregon Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, who's married to Judge Michael H. Simon. Although the filing claims that the administration recognizes that Judge Simon and Representative Bonamici speak for themselves, not for each other, it also states that Bonamici's public comments and presence at Oregon Governor Tina Kotek's press conference over the past few days could create the appearance of partiality. While that's happening, we also know that National Guard troops have gathered on the Oregon coast. Senator Jeff Merkley says roughly 200 Guard members are training in Warrenton this week. And while the timing of their expected arrival here in Portland remains unclear, it's likely it won't be today. Governor Kotek says the 60-day operation could cost up to $10 million, which would account for salaries, supplies, and lodging. We expect some of those National Guard members to arrive at the Portland ICE facility, maybe even by week's end. In the meantime, we've been keeping a close eye on protests outside the building near the South Waterfront. Here's KGW's Thomas Schultz with the latest.
Well, here outside the ICE facility along the South Waterfront in Portland, it's been really quiet all morning long. The most we've seen is one protester out here this morning, a few cars going in and out of the ICE building, but that's been the only movement. Now, crowds were a bit bigger overnight, as you would expect. Here's video of what our crew saw last night. Still a small crowd, though at one point protesters appeared to heckle federal agents on the roof of the building. Minutes later, agents opened the gates of the ICE facility and detained one protester. Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin sent us a statement about activity in the area on Tuesday, saying over 100 rioters stormed an ICE facility in Portland. Now, that's something we have not been able to verify. At most, we've seen 40 people here. And people we've spoken with in the area say national rhetoric about these protests just doesn't match what they're seeing.
honestly, like, for the most part, it was pretty peaceful yesterday, and it wasn't like as chaotic as they were saying. Like, I didn't see anybody rush the gate at all. And like I said, I think more of the rushing came from like the actual agents and stuff when they rolled out in the van and started just tearing down the street towards people and everything.
DHS Assistant Secretary McLaughlin went on to write, they assaulted law enforcement, even putting one member of law enforcement into the hospital, trespassed on federal property, attacked law enforcement by blinding them with strobe lights, and blocked the entrance to the facility. We did see an ambulance enter the building, but it's unclear what it was for. In terms of trespassing, we've seen a couple people cross painted lines on the ground. One person put a sign on the building. Our crews have also seen protesters use flashlights set to strobe mode, but for the most part, use loudspeakers. DHS also told us that 6 rioters, as they called them, were arrested for charges including assault of a federal officer. We did check in with the Multnomah County Jail booking system to see if we could find those suspects. They didn't pop up when we searched for them. Along the South Waterfront, Thomas Schultz, KGW News.
Portland police released these pictures of a suspect who's wanted in connection with an assault that they say happened Tuesday night outside the ICE facility. They say she was wearing different clothes that night, though. Police also tell us the person who was attacked was live streaming right around 8:30 that night when they were hit in the face with a flagpole. Authorities say the suspect got away before police officers got there. Stay with KGW for continuing coverage on the deployment of the National Guard to Portland and as Oregon's lawsuit against the Trump administration plays out. You can find the latest on air at KGW.com and also on our free TV streaming app, KGW+. All right, break from the headlines here to check in with Rod Hill in the Weather Center. What's happening behind you there, Rod?
Well, it's been a wetter day, much wetter day actually than what I was expecting. So this is what we have going on. So far, there hasn't been much rain along the coast. Some areas have been completely dry, in fact, this morning. Salem continues to be the kind of the wet bullseye overall, but here in Portland, we've had our fair share of rain, and we still have rain in the city right now. Nothing stormy. This is mostly light rain, but it is covering the entire downtown city core. As you can see, the rain's been moving to the northeast. So as you get more out toward Hillsborough and even more out toward Forest Grove, it's been pretty quiet. I mentioned parts of the coast have been mainly dry. Look at this. Blue skies, partly sunny skies, Schnuckwins Casino in Lincoln City, light winds and 62 degrees. That is a nice October afternoon. Now, I mentioned Salem has been kind of a wet bullseye. It has literally been raining here more of the morning hours minute by minute than it has not been. Temperature outside right now 58 at the top of the hour. McNary Field still reporting some rain. And you can tell, well, actually, if you look carefully, you can see the drops falling. So, yeah, it is a wet noon hour in the downtown area of Portland. We're at 57 degrees. Looking at things, I've re-examined it. I'm not sure we get sun breaks, and we may continue to see occasional shots of rain coming and going throughout much of the afternoon. That would be very similar to yesterday. Temperature at best probably 65 degrees. Drew, we still have a dry Friday, so this is still on track to be the finale of what started Monday, 4 days of rain at times. Back to you.
All right, we'll have that long-term forecast, Rod, coming up here in about 10 minutes. Back to news headlines this afternoon. We're tracking developing news out of New York. At least one person was injured after two Delta planes collided while taxiing at LaGuardia Airport last night. The wing of one of the planes collided with the nose of the other on the airport's taxiway just before 10 p.m. A flight attendant on board one of the planes was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. No passengers were injured. An Amtrak train headed to Seattle collided with a fuel tanker near Santa Barbara, California, leaving several people hurt. The truck actually broke down and was stuck on the tracks when the train hit it yesterday afternoon. The truck's driver was badly injured. 3 passengers on the train were taken to the hospital with minor injuries. There were about 260 people on board. Amtrak brought in buses to get those people to their final destinations.
The safety and security of our library patrons and our library staff is my #1 priority.
Efforts are being made to step up security at the Central Library in downtown Portland after some violent events outside the building this summer, including a deadly shooting and a stabbing. The library has already added more security inside and outside the building, but the director of the libraries says she isn't ready to add metal detectors just yet because of the cost, as well as pushback from workers. In July, someone was shot and killed just outside the library, and then a few weeks later, there was a stabbing across the street. Since those incidents and an increase in security, the library director says they've seen fewer issues.
We invest heavily in security. In fact, in our fiscal year 26 budget, we are investing $3.9 million in security costs overall in our library system.
The library director also says she would like to move forward with what are called vapor sensors, vapor sensors in the restrooms, which would help detect smoke from illegal drugs. Portland is pausing its recently rolled out plan to extend pay-to-park hours in some parts of the city. Mayor Wilson says the pause aims to support businesses and encourage evening activities, especially downtown. So after years of having to pay to park until 7 at night, the city recently extended that time to 10 p.m. But starting October 15th, we're going back to 7 p.m. in neighborhoods that include downtown and the Pearl District. The city's plan to extend pay-to-park hours in Northwest Portland has also been postponed.